teach every day for 11th and 5th grade kids, and if I mess up in the classroom, well, half of them aren't paying attention, so half of them don't know anyway. And the other half, I can just simply play it off by saying, well, thank goodness I was just looking to see who was paying attention to start with, and then I give them some type of treat, and then they get all excited, and look forward to my next mistake that I make. So I definitely covet your prayers this morning as I go forward. But I want you to picture with me for a second that you're at home. You've just gotten relaxed on the couch, or maybe watching your favorite TV show, and all of a sudden, you hear a knock at the door. You go and open the door, and to your surprise is a group of people from the United States Olympic Committee. And they tell you that they have been looking for someone to run in the next marathon. They have statistics on every person in the United States, all 329 million people. And they feel strongly that you are the one who can help lead their team to victory. Well, if you're like me, you're going to look at them like they're crazy, shocked and surprised. Like, you want me to run in this next Olympic race? Heather can tell you that the last couple of times I've ran here at church, maybe playing kickball or something with the youth group, it usually ends with me making a face plant to the ground. It's not a pretty sight. If you see me running, you might want to run too, because there is definitely something coming. That word is just not a part of my everyday vocabulary. But after the initial shock of things begin to wear off, you actually start picturing yourself standing up there on the podium with the other elite athletes of the world. I mean, after all, the committee did come to you and say that, you have what it takes to help win the race. At night, you dream about receiving that gold medal, hearing the national anthem play in the background. You dream about it. The race becomes your great passion in life. It dominates you. And you do everything possible to train and prepare. Well, as Christians, we have also been called to run a race. Ours is not a physical race, but a spiritual race. And there may be times that you question and you say, God, are you sure that you think I can run this race that has been set before me? But I want to tell you today that yes, you can run the race and you can run it well. This race is the race of a lifetime, and it's one that should occupy our waking moments and become the central focus of our life. In Hebrews 12, verses 1 through 3, it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. So today I want to share with you 4 ways that you can run the Christian race well. Number 1, run the race well by finding your motivator to run. That motivation comes from those who have ran the race before us. Hebrews 12, verse 1 starts off by saying that we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. I want you to picture running a race and the stands are filled with people cheering you on. Maybe you've gone tired, weary, you're ready to give up. But then all of a sudden you hear those cheers that are coming from the crowd. And all of a sudden you have a renewed sense of energy. You find the motivation to keep going and finish the race. Well, that's what's going on in the spiritual race that we are running. We are encouraged by the saints who have already gone on before us and the race that they themselves have ran. Saints such as Abraham. God called Abraham to leave his home. He left everything that he knew to travel to a place that he had never seen. But he went out on faith, blindly following God's call. At the age of 75, God promised Abraham a seed that would inherit the land and become a nation. At 100, he had Isaac. And all those years while waiting, he never lost faith. Abraham always obeyed God unquestionably. No questions asked. Even when told to sacrifice Isaac, he was willing to do it because he knew that the same God who gave Isaac to him in the first place could raise him from the dead. No questions asked, he was willing to do it. What a great man of faith and obedience Abraham was. Then we have Sarah. The Bible says that it's by faith that his wife Sarah was even able to conceive a child, even though she was considered barren and too old. And it's because of that faith that a whole nation nation was born, a nation so big that it can't even be counted. Another great saint from the Bible is Joseph. Joseph was sold into slavery in Egypt by his own brothers. He was falsely accused of assault and rape, thrown into prison. Yet still, Joseph never lost faith. And every time he was put into a situation, God was always there for him and brought him out of the situation even higher than before. We have Moses. Moses was ready and gave up all of the wealth and treasures of Egypt. He instead chose to be mistreated with the people of God. And Moses was afraid when God called him. He doubted his ability to be a leader, but still, throughout his fear and his doubt, he still followed faith and was faithful to God's call. He confronted Pharaoh many times, and he led his people out of Egypt. And I think it's important to note here that all of these people did not run the exact same race. Their finish line was the same, but the path that they took to get there was different. Abraham's journey was not identical to Moses. Moses' journey was different from that of Joseph's. They all had weaknesses, but God still used them, and they ran the Christian faith, a race that was set out before them. These are the saints, along with so many more, who are our great cloud of witnesses. They're surrounding us and cheering us on. Number 2, we can run the race well by casting all of our weights. If you're running in a race and you're trying to get to the finish line, you're not going to have a backpack on full of heavy things weighing you down. I was speaking with Jessica this morning in the nursery. She asked me to hand her bag. I picked it up and my arm about fell to the ground. Could you imagine us ladies with our heavy pocketbooks, our heavy bags? Some of us have diaper bags that we carry. Could you imagine all those things attached to you when you're trying to get to the finish line? Absolutely not. You're going to cast everything off and put it to the side. If I had those things on me, it would become a hindrance to me. Well, sin is no different. In the spiritual race that we are running, sin is like a weight holding us down. And the only way that we can persevere is to lay all sin aside. For sin hinders our fellowship with God, and it hinders the testimony that we give. Now, if I asked you this morning, I told you, I said, I need a favor. I need you to carry something for me. And I warned you ahead of time that it's going to be super, super heavy. You say, no problem, I got you. Now here, I'm going to show you what I need you to carry for me. I'll tell you here, I need you to carry this feather for me. The first thing you might would kind of smirk and laugh, you say, a feather? Super lightweight, not a big deal. I can carry that. Well, after a while goes by, you carrying the feather, those minutes turn into hours. You look at me and you say, Amy, you still need me to carry this feather for you? I say, yes, I'm not done. I still need you to carry it for me. By the end of the day, that once lightweight feather that you've been carrying around is going to feel like a ton of bricks. Sin is no different. We think of it as being lightweight. We think it's not a big deal, but whether we know it or not, that sin is a big hindrance in our life and it's weighing us down. What if you're running a race and you have a bathrobe on? Could you imagine the bathrobe getting entangled in your legs? I imagine it will cause you to trip and fall along the way. When we're running our Christian race, we must cast off everything that would be considered a hindrance to us. Sin is no different. What lightweight sins do you have in your life? Sins such as gossip, swearing, maybe envy. And once I was reflecting on this week, I found those things in my life every day. I can be at work and, something happened, I just, I get that urge, I go tell my teacher friends, did you hear what happened today? I mean, it's all of us are guilty of these things. And at a glance, they don't seem like a big deal. But over time, they begin to trip you up. And they prevent us from serving Jesus to the best of our ability. The third thing that we can do to run the Christian race well is to run with endurance. The writer of Hebrews says that once we have found our motivation to run, and once we have cast off all of our weights, we are to run with endurance the race that is set before us. Endurance means that you're in it for the long haul. If we're running in the Christian race, we need to know that it will take commitment, work, and determination. If I'm competing in a race competition, I'm not going to show up the day of the race just ready to run. If that were to happen, the coach would send me back home immediately. Instead, I'm going to be there day after day, putting in the time, the hours, and the commitment to train and become a better athlete. I'm going to persevere through times when it's tough. In our Christian race, we're not training physically, but we're training spiritually. Things that we can do to train ourselves is read our Bible every day, not just a hit and miss. Are we making prayer a key part of our everyday life? These are things that we should be doing daily, detailed. Or do we find ourselves allowing other worldly things to take a priority in our life? If we're running the Christian race with endurance and we're in it for the long haul, then we need to be prepared to count the cost of following Christ. There is definitely a price to pay, and it won't be easy. In 1 Peter 4:12, it says, "Dear friends, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal that has come on to test you, as though something strange were happening to you." 1 John 3:13 says, "Do not be surprised, my brothers and sisters, if the world hates you." The Bible goes on to speak of several who were persecuted for their faith. We have Paul, who was stoned. He was thrown into jail several times, beaten, flogged, involved in riots, even lived through a shipwreck. He was persecuted by Jews and Romans, ultimately beheaded, but still, through all of it, he kept the faith, and he still ran the race that was laid out before him, never deterring. John was boiled in oil, but didn't die, so the Romans decided to banish him to the island of Patmos, where he had visions and wrote the book of Revelation. The hymn we sang this morning, "It Is Well With My Soul," one of my favorite hymns. Most of us know the backstory behind that hymn. Could we ourselves, no matter what race we are given to run, what difficulties, what challenges we may face, can we ultimately say that it is well with my soul? These people in the Bible and so many more were willing to suffer just to follow God. Their Christian race was filled with many hardships, yet they never lost faith and they endured to the end. Hebrews 11, verses 33 through 40 says that by faith, these people overthrew kingdoms. They ruled with justice and received what God had promised them. They shut the mouths of lions, quenched the flames of fire, and escaped death by the edge of the sword. Their weaknesses was turned to strength. They became strong in battle and put whole armies to flight. Women received their loved ones back again from death, but others were tortured, refusing to turn from God in order to be set free. They placed their hope in a better life after the resurrection. Some were jeered at, and their backs were cut open with whips. Others were chained in prisons. Some died by stoning, some were sawed in half, and others were killed with the sword. Some went on, wearing skins of sheep and goats, destitute and oppressed and mistreated. They were too good for this world, wandering over deserts and mountains, hiding in caves and holes in the ground. All these people earned a good reputation because of their faith, yet none of them received all that God had promised. Are you prepared to travel the path that lies ahead of you? And are you willing to sacrifice, whatever the cost may be, to be a follower of Christ? Number 4, we can run the race well with our eyes on the prize. We should remain focused all times and limit those things that are become a distraction to us. Are we being mindful of what our eyes are watching? All of us have these favorite TV shows. Are there things on that show that we know are a hindrance to our race? Are we being careful of what our ears are hearing and listening? What is it feeding up to our mind? Are the friends that we have in our life that we've allowed in our inner circle, are they friends who will help us along our path? Or are they friends that will be a hindrance to your race? One of the most important things that we can do is to never look back. If I'm running in a race and I'm steady looking back behind me, then I've taken off my eyes off of the prize that lies ahead. The Christian race is no different. We are not to look back at the things that we have already cast off, the sins that we've already laid aside and put away. If I look back constantly at things that I once had, things that I once gave up, then it implies that our hearts and desires are still with the things of the world. And if we still belong to the world, then what will eventually become of us? At the end of this race, we're not going to receive a silver medal or a gold medal. Our prize will be even greater. We will be able to earn a great privilege of resting eternally in a place called heaven. A place so great that we can only imagine and envision what it will be like. I want to end this morning with a story that I came across a while back. This a lady, I don't even know who she is, but I came across her story on social media. She has 3 children, and her youngest child had suffered a near-death drowning. And so she would just share everyday glimpses. I became intrigued by her story and the everyday progress that they would make and strive towards. But even still, she would share glimpses into the other parts of her life with her other children, things with her workplace. And her older 2 children were around the ages of 7 and 10. Well, they decided to try out for the local track team. And she comes home that day and she looks at her son and she's like, well, congratulations, you made the team. He's so excited, grinning from ear to ear. She looks at her daughter. And she just knows she's going to hear the same thing. She looks and she says, you did not make the team. The tears immediately begin to flow from her eyes. She's just so disappointed. She's like, but Mom, she says, I did my best. I tried really, really hard. And she looks at the daughter and she says, well, she says, do you remember when you started the race? She said, you started off strong. You were going super. You had your eye on the finish line. But then you grew tired along the way. You decided to walk. After a while, you decided even walking was too much for you. And you decided to quit altogether. She says the coach wasn't looking today to see who could finish the race the fastest or who was the strongest. He was simply looking to see who actually made it to the finish line, who endured to the end and kept their pace and eventually made it to the end. Our Christian race will be filled with many obstacles along the way. There's going to be times we want to give up and we even question our ability to run the race. Can I do it, Lord? Are you ready and willing today to run the Christian race? And not just run the race, but are you looking back in your life and saying, Lord, I'm running the race the best I can. I've cast off all of my ways. I've put everything aside. I've watched what I've allowed into my inner circle of my life. Are we giving God everything that we have so that we can not only run the race, but run the race well? Thank you.